Hypothesis testing is one of the biggest ideas we're going to come across in an introductory statistics class. And over the next two videos, I'm going to introduce the general flow of how we're going to approach hypothesis testing. Hypothesis testing always begins with some claim. It either is someone's sentence or a belief or something that's already agreed upon by a group of people. And what we do with this claim is it gets broken into two statements called hypotheses. The first is called the null hypothesis. And the other is called the alternative hypothesis. We will use the symbols H sub 0 for the null and the symbol H sub A or sometimes H sub 1, depending on the book we're using or what I remember to use. So the idea is the null and alternative are two completely different statements that can't both be true. The null hypothesis often takes on the role of the status quo. It's what is generally already believed to be true. Maybe that's another way we could say it. Already believed to be true. The alternative, on the other hand, is something that we think may be the new truth. There's a challenge to the current system. The status quo may say one thing, but there may be new evidence that makes us want to change our minds. And so we've got these two competing statements, again, that can't both be true. And we will gather evidence and weigh it, and we're going to learn how to decide which one we end up standing by. So the first thing we need to learn is how to write these statements. So we're going to look at 4 examples, each starting with some claim, and we're just going to learn how to set up the original hypotheses. Okay, so here's some claim. The mean income of employees who took a statistics class in college is greater than $60,000. How we're going to set these up, we start always by saying H sub 0 followed by a colon and H sub A followed by a colon. When we read these statements, we have to think in terms of the large population. And when I see the word mean, that's a very common word we use in this class, I'm going to use the population symbol for mean. So I want you to predict what I'm going to write next. What is the population symbol for mean? And I am going to say it right here. It is mu. And I'm going to take this last statement, greater than $60,000, and convert it into my alternative hypothesis. I'll explain later why I put it here, but for now agree that I use the correct symbol for mean, mu, and greater than 60,000 looks like this. Well, if this is one statement, what's the other thing that could be true? If these can't both be true, what is the complement of this statement? Is that the mean is not greater than 60,000, but is less than or equal to $60,000. And that's it. That's all we do. We're just setting up my initial null and alternative hypotheses, and then that's where the hypothesis test then can begin. But we're just going to practice setting these up 3 more times. Example number 2. The proportion of 18 to 25-year-olds who currently use illegal drugs is equal to 0.20. Step 1, always start H0, HA. Now notice this time the word being used is proportion, where the last time it was the word mean. So I'm not going to use a mu. I'm going to use this symbol for the population proportion, which is just the letter P. And again, I'm reading this sentence, and the key phrase is equal to 0.20 is what we're going to write. And I'm going to write P is equal to 0.20 in my null. So then we ask ourselves, well, then what's the complement of this? What is not equals to 0.20? It could be greater than 20, or it could be less than. And the easiest way to say that is that it's just not equal to 0.20. And we're done. Now I'm going to pause before I look at my next example. You may have noticed that when I interpreted the phrase greater than 60,000, I put it in my alternative. And when I interpreted the phrase equal to 0.20, I put it in my null. How do you know where to put it? Well, it turns out the easy way to make this decision is to ask yourself, where does the equal sign belong? Wherever you see an equal sign, it always belongs in the null. So when I go back to my first example and I read the phrase greater than 60,000, it didn't say greater than or equal to. It just said greater than, so I put it in my alternative, which forced my null to pick up the equal sign. So always remember the null has an equal sign. Example 3. The majority of college students have credit cards. HO, HA. Well, this time the word majority doesn't say mean, it doesn't say proportion. But I want you to think for a moment, majority is more of one than the other. When you hear the word majority, we think greater than something or most. And it turns out it's more in the lines of the world of proportion than in the world of means. Now, what does majority mean? It means anything over 50%, more than half. So that belongs in my alternative as P greater than 0.50. If you equal 50%, you're not a majority yet. And so that picks up in the null as P less than or equal to 0.50. So one takeaway is whenever you see the word majority, always remember it's a proportion, and majority always shows up as P greater than 0.50 as the alternative. All right, last example. The average weight of plastic thrown away daily per household is less than 5 pounds. HO, HA. Again, the word average shows up right here, so I'm going to use the correct symbol mu. I look at the phrase less than 5 pounds. I don't read the word equals, so that shows up right here. Mu is less than 5 pounds, which forces my null then to be mu is greater than or equal to 5 pounds.